welcome to another episode of RC Retirement. I'm your host DJ, and I have another great episode for you. So thank you for coming back to view that or listen if you're on podcast. And now I have just a few quick intro comments for you. If you are listening on podcast or any other sort of medium, I do recommend that you at least go to RC Retirement and look up the episode number for this particular episode, because there are comments on the screen that have been made, and they aren't necessarily critical, but they are at times clarifying what has been said on the screen. So for those of you on podcast or radio or whatever, this is episode 117 for YouTube. So just keep that in mind. Alright, so this is part 4 of the Q&A with the Army Reserve officer Heather and her husband, although you don't see her husband in this one. In this, you'll see that Heather asked about the disability evaluation system timeline and about some advice that Misty and I would have for soldiers going through the evaluation system, and as well as what we look for specifically when we are trying to assist soldiers who are looking for assistance from us for various reasons. So let's go on with this part of the video, and I will be back shortly.
Okay, so on that then, what would you say is the typical timeline for IDES? Like how long is the process on average, and what types of things could maybe slow it down or speed it up?
All right, I'm gonna put something on the screen here. The standard timeline for an active component soldier is 295 days. And
is that from the start as in the initial examination or the initial fit for duty exam? Where does that timeline start?
All right, so the question is, when does it start? It starts once you're actually referred to the IDES. The MEB is the first phase, and it's got several sub-phases within it: referral, claim development, the actual evaluation, and then the MEB stage. So you can see all those little pieces within the MEB phase. And I sent, Heather, I sent you this timeline earlier, so you can examine that a little closer later on. And I've probably at some point talked Misty's ear off about how this works, so she's sick of hearing it. She just smiles and nods.
I got to hear about it in real time when you went through it, so.
Right. All 300 days, actually 600 days. It was almost 2 years in my case. But
so when going through this, is there any parts of this that could get held up?
yes, the MEB phase can be held up. That's the part that's going to drag on longer, if anything. That's also the part where the Physical Evaluation Board Liaison Officer, the PEBLO, is going to call you, is going to ring your phone off like mad if the timeline starts to go off the rails a little bit, because they are graded according to how well they can stick to the timeline. So if it starts to appear like they're swaying from that timeline, they get nervous and start calling a lot. So they did that with me all the time. So especially with some of these sub-phases, if you have claim development, for example, let's just say that you're in the middle of that. For an active component soldier, you've got 10 days for claim development, which that's really kind of odd because they say you're active component, but you're Army Reserve. So which one are you really? Are you active or are you reserve?
That's why I was wondering the same thing.
You know, and I was asking the same question when I was doing this. Like, hey, sure, I'm AGR, but I'm dealing, half of the people that I need to help me, like my commander, are part-time. My first sergeant is part-time and lives, 150 miles away. I can't just order him to show up and do things. So, and of course the active component people down at Fort Knox or whatever active component installation is managing this don't quite understand the reserve component way of things. They just stare like we're aliens. All right, so yeah. So if you're going to have things sway from the timeline, it's most likely going to be in the MEB phase. They tend to stick more to it in the physical evaluation board phase. And when they start getting kind of nebulous is in the transition phase, because no one's really paying that much attention to you at that point. You're pretty much on your way out or being returned to duty at that point. So those are more estimates for time than anything else. But the central part are the MEB and PEB phases. Those are managed more closely than anything else.
So on here, it talks about that the service member can rebut the decisions.
Absolutely. And I highly encourage that you do so if you disagree with anything.
So it says that for the informal one, and then there's also a formal evaluation board as well. So there's two different ones.
Yes. The first physical evaluation board is the informal board. And most of them are informal. If you rebut, if you appeal the decision, it goes to a formal board. Like in my case, the formal board was in Washington, D.C. There were one or two conditions that I thought were not added that should have been. It was probably one. I think it was one. I know that my migraines had not been added. There might have been a second one, but I know I was fighting to get migraines added. The interesting thing when I showed up to that board is even my lawyer, who sat right next to me, thought I didn't have a snowball's chance of convincing the board of adding severe migraines as a disabling factor to the decision. She was telling me, accept the severance pay and get out.
Not a very good lawyer.
Well, she actually did a good job. I had been telling her for a couple of weeks, this is what I want to do. I'd like your assistance. And she gave a stellar argument to that effect, even though she didn't agree with it. So I'll give her a thumbs up for doing what her client wanted. and I wasn't quite sure it was going to work. What I'm pretty sure swung it was I got hit with one right in the middle of the board. Well, I started getting blurry vision and and other symptoms, about half an hour in.
That would make a difference, yes.
Yeah, and it was obvious.
Yeah. When I pointed it out to my coworkers one time that I was starting to get a migraine, and then they looked at me and they're like, I can tell a difference in you. Like once I pointed it out, they could start to see a difference in me.
Yeah.
I told them how my husband can tell a difference in me when I have a migraine, and then they started looking for it and they could tell.
Yeah. There was a lieutenant colonel, a military HR officer, and a civilian medical officer in there, and or a civilian medical doctor in there, and the civilian noticed right away something was happening, and she interrupted the board and asked, is something wrong? And that's when the other two noticed, and they asked if I'd like to suspend the board and come back later. And I said no. I carry prescription drugs around just in case things like this happen, and took some sitting right there. Said, let's finish this, and then I'll go back to my hotel and hide with the lights out. But I don't know how much longer we have, but let's finish this. And I won the case. That's probably why, though.
That makes sense. I'm going to actually be able to see it.
Yeah.
So on that then, Misty, I have a question for you. If you do have to appeal something, what recommendations would you have of what kind of documentation should somebody collect to then submit if, say, somebody either forgot to add something to it or if they don't believe it's a strong enough argument?
Well, when I'm compiling the medical records for David, what I look for is actually a timeline, because it's extremely valuable if you can show, especially since appeals tend to happen sort of after you've been out of service or start to have other things going on. If you can show how far back a condition goes, and you can then start to see like what effects it has. So the ideal thing you'll have is this, you'll have what's called a progress note, which is what your doctor writes in the record when they meet with you, that says, this has been going on this long, this is what we've tried, this is the effects that the patient is reporting at that time, and this is how we're still having to work through it. So you start seeing like the history develop, so you can create a really good argument that this goes back and you have done everything possible to, and you also have a witness to how bad it is. And specifically when we're talking about things like migraines, if you ever have to go to the emergency room for a migraine, that would be something to definitely keep. If you have to go to a specialist as opposed to a regular neurologist, there are headache specialists in the world. That's something to have. If you have to have some of the higher level treatments like Botox or injections, or if you fail some of the more potent drugs, those things really speak to severity, and they speak to how much it's going to affect your life both in and out of the service. I'm sure David also has an opinion on what records you should be looking for.
Well, you hit on a lot of them. I looked for similar things. Now, of course, I look for them I look for things not necessarily from a medical perspective. I look at them from an HR perspective, but we're essentially looking for patterns either way. So once you see the patterns, you start getting a better idea of what to gather. And that's actually why I practically lassoed Misty, because I knew I was missing patterns when it came to medical documentation. It's like, I see bits and pieces, but I know I'm missing things. So I need someone who can spot, the medical side of the patterns. I can see everything else, but you don't know what you don't know. And things have gotten so much better now. Thank you, Misty.
I would actually give patients a piece of advice for that too, and being an involved patient in your care and knowing how to gauge what treatments you're getting. It's really valuable to go look at one of the well-respected medical sites. My favorites for the patient side are either Medline Plus, which is run by the NIH, or the Mayo Clinic's website, and read through all the things that go with it, with your condition. So you understand what are the tiers of treatment, what are they looking for when they're judging severity, how is your doctor thinking as they're working you through this process. And on both of those sites, you can read both the patient and the doctor side, depending on how many things you want to Google as far as medical terms. You will pick them up eventually. So you can actually look and get an idea of what the standard of care should be for different severities. And a lot of times, and I will speak to this personally with health conditions, you'll go read that and go, well, I thought I was doing all right, but I'm really scoring in the severe box here. So maybe I have to rethink how I'm treating myself with this. But that gives you a bit of a framework to start collecting the records and knowing what's important.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
I'll send you links for both of those sites, and I'll rack my brain a little more to see if there's any other good, well-respected ones, because of course, on the internet, it is extremely important to get your medical information from a well-respected and scientifically reviewed source.
Yes, not, what was...
Even Dr. Google is doing better, but there are some that are very famous for being out of touch with reality. By the way, I will say, I'm not a medical doctor. I am a medical researcher, so I am not licensed to diagnose anybody. But I can do lots of research for you. All
right, so I hope that you found that as entertaining as I did. There were some interesting bits there. If you noticed, Misty's cat was always staring right into the camera with considerable interest as to what was going on. I found that quite amusing. So just a little sidebar comment there. All right, so we're almost done with the Q&A with Heather. I've only got 2 more pieces of that to go. So if you're looking at the publication schedule, you'll see there's actually a week left of this, and then we go on to some other topic. And yes, I do have things in mind. I'm not going to just let things roam around freely. So there is a plan. All right. Next thing is, as always, I have my call to action here. If you would like to support my efforts, and as you see, there's someone else here now who is assisting me. If you'd like to support our efforts on a regular basis, then I invite you to go to rcretirement.com, patreon.com/rcretirement, and start a regular contribution of whatever amount you like. And that's not per episode on YouTube that is per month. So just keep that in mind. It's not, per my publication schedule. It's a monthly contribution. So if any of you who were on the fence were thinking it was a per episode contribution, then don't be concerned. It's a lot easier on your checkbook than that. Oh, I just dated myself there by calling it a checkbook. All right. There are also other ways that you can support us. You can do your Amazon shopping at no additional cost to you by simply clicking on one of the Amazon links on rcretirement.com. And if you so choose, you can also make a one-time contribution through PayPal at the email address dj@rcretirement.com. And I would be greatly appreciative of either of those. They all are a great assistance to what is now my full-time profession, and hopefully a great assistance to some of you guys out there. So in order to keep doing this, I have to keep asking for your help. So let's help each other. All right, so let's continue next week with another episode of the Q&A with Heather. And I think you'll find, especially when we get Dan involved, that it becomes even more interesting of a Q&A, because when you get the two of them involved, they rebound off each other and start coming up with some very interesting questions and commentary. So, as always, I thank you for being part of this audience, for spending your time with me. If you have not done so, let's see if I can get this right. All right, finally pointing in the right direction. I think doing this helped. So if you have not subscribed to this channel, then I do invite you to come over and do so by clicking the logo in the lower, well, on your side of the screen. It would be on the left side. Actually, let's see. Let me look at the screen here. Nope, it'll be on the right side. But when I'm pointing, and of course I'm looking at a camera up here, so I'm pointing with my left hand, so it looks kind of funny. All right, but yeah, I do encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and those of you who are subscribing to the podcast or subscribing on SoundCloud, I do encourage that as well, and thank you for doing so. The numbers may be small, but they're still an encouragement to me, and it gets me to keep doing this. So again, thank you. I would like to cross the 4-digit mark on YouTube at some point in the near future. Right now, the website socialblade.com says that I will do that sometime in, let's see, what were they saying? They say I'll do that sometime in late November 2021 at the rate things are currently growing. Of course, I'd like to prove that wrong, but we'll see how things go. I do ask that if you believe the information from any of these videos are of benefit to you or other people, then please share them. Please give them a thumbs up or a like. They're the same thing, but people like different terms. Please give them a like, a thumbs up, share them, subscribe to the channel, and tell other people about the channel. Spread the word. Again, let's help each other out. All right, so that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much. Please come back for the next episode, and we'll wrap up the Q&A with Heather and have some great info all around. Thank you very much, as always, and thank you for your service. Have a great day.
If you liked what you heard on today's episode, then please go below and give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, please let other people know about this channel and the information it can provide for them. If you have questions or comments, then please have no qualms about posting them in the comments section below. Please remember the RC Retirement YouTube channel and the RC Retirement website are not recognized or endorsed by the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, or any other government agency. The information presented in these resources are for entertainment and informational purposes only. Also, the content of either of these resources should not be considered financial or legal advice. Please consult with your own legal counsel, accountant, or financial planner before making any decisions based on what you have learned here. As always, thank you for watching the RC Retirement YouTube channel.